for me. I'm sorry. All right.
Oh, we were just making small talk while we were waiting. Anyway, and don't feel too bad because if you'd been much later, we wouldn't have waited. So it's okay.
You want to start, Riley?
Okay, we're in.
Sure.
Yeah, Yud base Aleph.
Right.
Shabbos, Yud Base, Aleph.
Well, he does this. I'll be right back. I'll be right. Just need 30 seconds.
Okay. Um, with regard to one who builds on Shabbos, how much must he build to be liable for a sin offering? The sages say one who builds is liable for building any amount, and one who chisels or strikes with a hammer or with an aids that
Yeah.
adds that little
Yes, that tool that
axe
you.
that's not this way but this way.
Mhm.
One who drills a hole of any size on Shabbos is liable. This is the principle. Anyone who performs a prohibited labor and his labor endures on Shabbos is liable. And so too, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, even one who strikes an anvil with a sledgehammer during his labor has performed a constructive act and is liable because he is as one who improves the labor that he's performing. Base. One who plows is liable for plowing any amount of land on Shabbos. One who weeds and removes grass on Shabbos, and one who removes dry branches and who prunes any amount is liable. With regard to one who gathers wood, if he did so to enhance the tree or the land, he is liable for any amount. If he did so for fuel, he is liable for collecting a measure equivalent to that which is used to cook an easily cooked egg. With regard to one who gathers grass, if he did so to enhance the plants, he is liable for any amount. If he did it to feed an animal, he's liable for collecting the measure equivalent to a goat's mouthful.
Okay.
Or to Gimel.
One who writes two letters, whether with his right hand or left hand, whether of one character or of two characters, whether with two inks or in any language, he's liable. Rabbi Yossi says they declared writing two letters liable only because of marketing, for thus they would write on the boards of the Mishkan to know which ones were mates. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi said, we find a short name which is a part of a long name, Shem from Shimon, Shmuel from or Shmuel, Noah from Nahor, Dan from Daniel, and God from Gadil.
All right. Dalet hakosef shtei osios behelim echad. So if somebody writes these two characters in one bout of forgetfulness, that's a helem, is one forgetting. He's chayav. Okay, kasav b'dio b'sam b'sikra b'komas b'kankantum b'chol davar shiroshem. Okay, it doesn't matter if he whatever type of ink or substance that he uses. Some is dio is ink, some is oh gosh, what are the translations of all these things? There are different types of things that make impressions. It's a kind of some is a kind of an orange earth. Sikra is red dye. Komos is resin. Pancantum is that chemical stuff. What do they call it?
Sulfate. Sulfate.
That's a ferrous sulfate. That's right. Anything that makes an impression. Al shnei kosle zavis. If it's even if you wrote them on two adjoining walls, right, in an angle. Well, shnei loche pinkas, or two plates of a ledger. They used to have these ledgers that they would write in using wax, and they would so he does on one page and then next to it on the other page. They negin zemze, but they are readable next to each other. So you would see them as one entity, one word. Chayav. So that's in all these cases he's chayav for writing, even if it's like one is on the one wall and the other one's at the 90 degrees to it, but you can read them together. Kosev al basaro chayav. Even if you write on your flesh, that's also chayav. Hamsaret al basaro. If he scratches it onto his skin, Rabbi Eliezer mechayav chatas, Rabbi Yeshua poter. Okay, and as is generally the case, the halacha follows Rabbi Yeshua versus Rabbi Eliezer. that scratching onto your skin is not considered a permanent writing. Okay, kasav b'mashkin b'meiperos. So so Mishnah Dalet tells you all of the things that you're chayav for, and Mishnah Hay is going to give you a list of things that you're patur for. Not that they're all permitted; some of them might be permitted, but if somebody wrote using these things, then he's patur. So with mashkin, if he writes with liquids, so for example, somebody spills some water on the table or juice on the table, and he sort of traces it into a word, that's not considered writing. But may peros, so right with fruit juice. But avak drachim, if you write something in the dust on the side of the road, that's not considered permanent writing. The wind comes and blows it away. Okay, or in beach sand or whatever. Okay, but avak hasofrim, in the dust of the scribes, which is afruris shel keses hasofer. That is, it's basically it seems like a waste from the scribe, waste dust from one of his activities. I'm not sure exactly what.
Mine says use the scribe's dust that they used to dry the ink. Like if you maybe what you sprinkle onto the ink.
Sprinkle it.
Dry it out.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's not something that you would write with. Okay, or anything else that doesn't last. Pater. If he does it backhanded. So now we're dealing with things with a shino. If he writes with his foot, the fiv of marpeko, with his mouth or with his elbow. Kasav os achas samuch lekasav. Or let's say there was writing already there, and let's say you wanted to pluralize a word and you added an s onto the end of the word. So that is patur, because you still, even though you completed a word, made it longer, it's only one letter that you actually wrote, and therefore you patur. Kasav el gabe kasav, or if he overwrote existing script, so it was faded, let's say, and he went over it to darken it. Niskavin lichtov ches v'kasav shnei zaynim. This incidentally, this Mishnah is actually very interesting, because there are different shittas in how to write a ches. The Nusach Ashkenaz is to make two zayins and to put a bridge on top, where the Sfarad way of writing it is a vavanach and a zayin. So it's interesting, because this Mishnah is pretty clear that a ches in the time of the Mishnah at least is two zayins. So if he writes two zayins and intending to put a bridge over it to make it into a ches, so that's not as if he wrote two zayins. He's still only writing one letter. Okay. Echad ba'aretz ve'echad b'korah. What happens if he writes one on the ground and one on the beam next to it? Or kasav al shnei kostei abayis, or he wrote it on two walls of the house. Al shnei dafi pinkas ve'ein negin zeh zeh. So he wrote one letter there, but they're not readable together. You wouldn't automatically think they're part of the same entity. In all these cases, patur. Kasav os achas notrikon. If he writes one letter as an abbreviation. So, for example, using a reish as an abbreviation for Rebbe, right? So just as a or like. So he writes a shin as an abbreviation for Shaul, just to keep it as just to put a siman on his talus or something like that. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseir Mechayev v'Chachamim Potrin. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseir says that this is if you understand from this letter that there's a whole word, then that is considered keilu he wrote the whole word. But he's the minority opinion, and the halacha follows the chachamim that till tachlis it's only one letter, and you'd be patur. Okay. Hakosev shtei osios b'shnei helemos. If somebody writes these two letters in two bouts of forgetfulness, now previously in Mishna Dali we were talking about one helem. Now we're talking about two helemos, so meaning that a guy writes one letter, and then his wife comes in and says, "Hey, what you doing? It's Shabbos," and he says, "Oh my gosh." And then whatever he goes about his business, and he picks up and starts doodling again and writes the second letter next to it. Okay, that's called two helemos. Okay. Or achas shachris achas ben harbaim. Or if he wrote one in the morning and one in the evening. No, it's a long time between the two. It's not the normal amount of time that a person takes to write two letters. Rabban Gamliel mechayev chachamim pochin. So Rabban Gamliel says that that there's no yediyah for a chatzi shir. What does that mean? That if you have yediyah in between, it has to be yediyah about a full shir. That if in order to be chayav, he would agree that if the guy wrote two letters and then he suddenly realized, oh my gosh, it's Shabbos, so he's now chayav in one chatas, and he forgets again and he writes another two letters, that's a second chatas. So that's two yediyahs. So according to Rabban Gamliel, he agrees. That's that everyone agrees on that point, that there was a yediyah in between. You've got two separate things. But when it comes to chatzi shir, which is one letter instead of two letters, then there's not a yediyah in. Then a yediyah in between is not counted as a yediyah, and he can only have a yediyah once he's actually completed something. However, again, the halacha follows the chachamim that the yediyah in between interrupts the malacha, and he would be pater for this case.
Isn't that similar to the Mishnah we had, where if someone does on Shabbos does one thing and then or he does the whole thing? I'm trying to think of an example. I just can't think of anything. You know what I mean? Whether he's responsible for one katas or whether he's responsible for each one that he did.
Yes. So in Zayin Aleph we had that
Right.
principle that if somebody does one melacha, but if you have, you see that Mishnah Aleph is talking about when there's one helem. Mm-hmm. So in one helem he goes and he plants something, and he prunes his tree, and he also goes and writes something, and every single av melacha that he does that in that one helem is a separate chatas. That's what he's saying. He knows that it's Shabbos. He knows that there are halachas of Shabbos. It's just that he forgot it was Shabbos, and that he forgot he forgot himself and did all these different malachas, and then suddenly realizes, oh my gosh, it's Shabbos, and I just did all these things. So there he's chayav on every av malacha.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, but if he had a yediyah in between, then that chops it off, and you start again. So he can even be chayav twice for the same malacha. Okay. All right, back to Ches Vav.
Bone, enough to make a spoon. Rabbi Yehuda says enough to make it with a tooth of a key. Glass, enough to scrape the point of a weaver's needle, or pebble or stone, large enough to throw at a bird. Rabbi Eliezer ben Bar Yaakov says large enough to throw it at an animal.
One who carries out a shard of earthenware on Shabbos is liable if its measure is equivalent to that which is used to place between one pillar and another. This is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says the measure is equivalent to that which is used to stoke a fire. Rabbi Yossi says in a measure equivalent to that which is used to hold a quarter log in it. Rabbi Meir said, although there's no proof for the matter, there's a biblical allusion, to my opinion, as it says, and he shall break it as a potter's vessel is broken, smashing it without sparing. And here's what the Mishna actually says: and there shall not be found among its pieces a shard to rake fire on the hearth. From Yeshayahu. Rabbi Yossi says to him, yeah, that's proof. Is there proof from there? The verse concludes, and to extract water from a cistern.
Which is basically what Rabbi Yossi says, Kedei lekabel bo revius.
Right.
Said Rabbi Akiva, from where do we learn that an object of idolatry transmits tumor contamination by carrying, like a menstruant? For it is stated, cast them away like a menstruant, go out, shall you say to it. Just as a menstruant transmits tumor contamination by carrying, so does an object of idolatry transmit tumor contamination by carrying. All right.
Okay. Orla. Yes.
Okay. Which one did you say, Shaul?
Gimel Ches.
Gimel Ches. I didn't hear the Gimel. Okay. How so? If the nut splits, the pomegranates burst open, and the jars opened, the gourds were cut, or the loaves were broken up. They avoided 1 in 200.
So we're talking. This is coming on from the previous Mishnah. We were talking about all these very special species that are considered so chashuv that they wouldn't be batel um, in the normal shear. But if those things were broken open, then they no longer have that chashivas and they're batel in the regular 201.
Okay. Doubtful orla in the land of Israel is prohibited. In Syria is permitted. And outside the land, one may go down and purchase from a non-Israelite as long as he has not seen him gathering it. A vineyard planted with vegetables, which are kolaim, and the vegetables, are sold outside of it. In the land of Israel, these are prohibited. In Syria, they are permitted. Outside the land, one may go down and purchase them as long as he does not gather them with his own hand. New produce is prohibited by the Torah in all places, and orla is a halacha, and kilaim are an enactment of the
Orla
scribes.
is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. When I say halacha, it means halacha l'Moshe Sinai.
Orla is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and kilaim is a gezerah, divrei sofrim.
Hadron alach maseches orla. One more from Bikurim.
Okay. Some bring Bechorim and recite, bring but do not recite, some do not bring. Those do not bring, he who plants into his own, but sinks a shoot into that of an individual or the public, and likewise he sinks a shoot from that into the private or the public into his own. He who plants into his own and sinks a shoot into his own, but a private or public road is in between, such a one does not bring. Rabbi Yehuda says such a one does bring.
Okay. Shvius. I'm going to finish that too. Okay. Good test.
Yes. One who repays his debts after the 7th year, the sages are pleased with him. One who borrows from a convert whose son had converted with him, the debt need not be repaid to his sons. But if he returns it, the sages are pleased with him. All movable property can be acquired only by the act of drawing, but whoever fulfills his word, the sages are well pleased with him.
Hadron alach maseches Shvius.
Okay.
Okay. Trumos.
I didn't take it out.
Okay.
Yeah, let me find where we're at.
Aleph.
Mishnah, Trumos, Aleph. 5 may not give Truma, and if they did so, their Truma is not considered Truma. A Cheresh, a Shoteh, a minor, and one who gives Truma from that which is not his own. So we've got a deaf mute,
Imbecile.
an imbecile, yeah, minor, and one that gives Truma from his not from what's not his. That's only 4.
Without permission. Cheresh shoteh katan torem she'einu shelo, and then
if a non-Jew gave Truma from that which belongs to from a Jew, an Israelite, even if it was with his permission, his Truma is not Truma. Oh, okay, and the goy.
Yeah. So a Jew can give Truma from somebody else's produce with permission, but a non-Jew can't even with permission. Right, it's just not a mitzvah that he's shaykh, and just like a non-Jew can't shecht an animal even if he knows all the halachas.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Deaf person who can speak but does not hear may not separate truma, but if he separated, his truma is truma. The Cheresh spoken of by the sages is always one who can neither hear nor speak.
Okay. Right. Tauros.
Okay.
Daled Yud Gimel.
Uncertainty concerning sacrificial offerings. If a woman has a possible obligation because of 5 doubtful cases of childbirth or 5 doubtful cases of siva, she brings a single offering and may then eat sacrificial foods. and the other offerings are not incumbent upon her.
This was actually that was actually a story where Rabban Gamliel came and intervened, because there were lots of cases of these women who had a number of korbanot that they were bringing in, and they couldn't eat korbanot, and it was major financial strain, and so he paskined this halacha that she only has to bring one, and the rest of all voluntary. If she wants to bring more, she can, but there's no obligation. And it dropped the price of the birds significantly, and it was good for the economy anyway.
Sorry, what parak of Mishna are we on?
We're now in Hey Aleph.
Hey Aleph. A dead sheretz and a dead frog in a public domain, and also if there was there an olive's bulk of a corpse and an olive's bulk of Karen, a bone of a corpse and a bone of Karen, a clod of clean earth and a clod from a doubtful grave area, a clod of clean earth and a clod from the land of the Gentiles, or if there were two paths, one unclean and the other clean, and a man walked through one of them, but it's not known which, or if he overshadowed one of them, but it's not known which, or if he shifted one of them, but it's not known which. Rabbi Akiva rules that he is unclean, but the Chachamim say that he is clean.
Okay, so this is all these cases, they're all in pairs, all these cases, where you've got one possibility that's tahor and one possibility that's tameh. Okay, so in all these cases, Rabbi Akiva says that because Safek Tumah in Rishus Harabim is only tahor when it comes for taras, when the Safek comes for taras that come after the Safek arose. Okay, so because there's no takana for them, but legabe the person, Rabbi Akiva says, well, let him go to mikveh, let him purify himself. But the Chachamim say no. In all these cases, the Safek mamish leaves him tahor.
Okay, Gimel.
Yeah, base.
Space. I've once said I touched this object, but I do not know whether it is tamei or the tahor, or I touch one of the objects, but I do not know which one of them I touch. Rabbi Akiva rules him tamei, and the Chachamim rule him tahor. Rabbi Yossi rules him tamei in all cases, but rule him tahor in the case of the path, for it is the way of people to walk, but it is not the way to touch.
Right. In other words, what Rabbi Yossi is saying is that why do you have to touch it? You didn't have to touch it. Nobody forced you to touch these things. So treat yourself like it's tamei. But paths, people have to walk. So you can't penalize the guy for walking. Nonetheless, the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Yossi, it still follows the Chachamim over here. Okay. Menachos Vav Aleph.
The following mincha offerings require kemitza, and the remainders go to the Kohanim. The mincha offering of fine flour, the Shabbos, the markeshes, the chalos, the rekakin, the mincha offering of Gentiles, the mincha offering of women, the mincha offering of the omer, the sinners mincha offering, and the jealousy mincha offering. Reb Shimon says the sinners mincha offering or of Kohanim requires kemitza, while the comets offering by itself, the comets being offered by itself, and the remainder being offered by itself.
See, normally the coin's mincha goes entirely on the mizbeach. So why do you need to take a kemitza off it? So Rabbi Shimon says that nonetheless you do have to separate it and put them both on the mizbeach separately. But the halacha follows the Tanna Kama.
Okay. The meal offering of priests, the meal offering of the anointed priest, that is the high priest, and the meal offering brought with the libations that accompany burnt offerings and peace offerings are burned in their entirety on the altar, and there is no part of them for the priest. And in the case of those offering, the power of the altar is greater than the power of the priests.
The altar gets everything, and the priests get nothing.
The 2 loaves, that is the public offering on Shavuos, and the showbread, they're eaten by the priests, and there's no part of them that's burned on the altar. And in the case of those offerings, the power of the priests is greater than the power of the altar.
All mincha offerings which are prepared in a vessel require 3 applications of oil: pouring, mixing, and placing oil in the vessel prior to the preparation. The chalos, however, one mixes them. These are the words of Rebbe. But the Chachamim say as fine flour. The chalos require mixing, and the rekakin are anointed. How are they anointed? Like a chi. The remainder of the oil is eaten by the Kohanim. Right.
Okay.
All right.
And Nadarim Tes Aleph.
Reb Eliezer says they may find grounds to annul a neder for a person with the honor of his father and his mother. The Kakaman, however, forbid it. Said Reb Tzadok, before they find grounds to annul the neder for him with the honor of his father and mother, they should do so with the honor of God. If so, no nedarim, no nedarim. Uh, the sages agree with Reb
There
Eliezer.
would be no Nadarim, he's saying. They're
Right.
saying, like, would you have made this neder if you'd known how much it would embarrass your father and mother that you're the kind of guys going out and taking Nadarim? So says Rabbi Tzadok, okay, so in Kvar, telling that, would you have done this if you'd known that Hashem really hates it when people take Nadarim like this? And he said, oh, well, if you can find that Pesach for everyone, and then you basically annul the whole concept of Nadarim, because anyone would be able to tie that. Oh, I didn't, from Hashem. No, I wouldn't be able to. So that's his time that you would basically undermine the whole concept of Nadarim.
The sages agree with Rabbi Eliezer, however, that for a matter between him and his father and mother, they may find grounds to annul his neder with the honor of his father and mother.
Okay. And Rabbi Eliezer further said they may broach disillusion by asking about a new situation, but the rabbis prohibited it. How might they do this? If one said, it's forbidden to me to like an offering, that I will therefore not derive benefit from so-and-so. It is forbidden to me like an offering that I will.
Konam. So that's the expression of
the
neder.
Konam.
That's Konam, yeah.
It's Konam for me that I will
benefiting from so-and-so. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And that person later becomes a scribe, and the one who took the vow now requires the services. Or if the one forbidden by the vow is marrying off his son and prepared a feast for all the residents of his town, and the one that had taken the vow said, well, had I known that he would become a scribe or that he would be marrying off his son in the near future, I would not have vowed. The Mishna cites in that that's how you could undo it.
So that's where Rabbi Eliezer would say, yeah, okay. The Mishnah will say it later. Go on.
The Mishna cites another example. If one said, entering this house is konam for me, and that house became a shul, and he said, well, had I known it would become a shul, I wouldn't have vowed. And in all such cases, Rabbi Eliezer permits the halakhic authority to use this as a basis for dissolution of the vow, and the rabbis prohibit it. Is it
because when a person
the situation actually has to change, though, or is he saying the situation
actually has to change? Yes,
it's not hypothetical.
No, it's where something new did happen, and now Rabbi Eliezer says, okay, so that's a change in circumstances, and he didn't realize this when he made the vow, so we can dissolve it. And the Chacham say, no, when somebody makes a vow, they know that things can happen. It's not that ridiculous that somebody's going to turn their house into a shul, or that he's going to make a wedding or whatever. If you have a negative neder from him, then you're making that neder knowing that he might become somebody useful, and you might have need of his services. Mm-hmm. So they don't see that as a petach for dissolving the vow.
Yeah.
Okay, Gimel.
We have Reb Meir says there are things which are like unexpected developments and are not like unexpected developments. The Chachamim, however, do not agree with him. How? If one said, "Konam, by marrying so and so because her father is evil," and they told him he died or that he was repented, Konam this house with respect to my entering because an evil dog is in it, or because a snake is in it, and they told him the dog died or the snake had been killed. These are things which are like unexpected developments, but are not like unexpected developments. The sages, however, do not agree with him.
So Rabbi Meir is coming to be Michael over here. That you don't actually that once the reason for his neder has fallen away, then you don't need to then like his neder has fallen away. Because if he refuses to marry this woman, he takes a neder not to marry her because her father's evil, and then her father dies. So what does he care now? Or that he is his chozeh b'tshuva? Why should he Why should he worry about it? So Chachamim say no, he still made a neder, and that's it still stands. But Rabbi Meir is saying no, it's cool. It's cool now. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
My son-in-law told me a funny story yesterday. You might not find it funny, both of you, but he being a real Israeli, he said only in Israel, this is the only place that this could happen in. He would happen to be in a situation where he didn't do anything wrong. A situation where they were carrying a prisoner. They were taking up three policemen were taking a prisoner, and he was in shackles. You know where they put the hand, the
Yeah.
wrist shackles, and the shackles go all the way down to the feet and all that.
Yes.
I couldn't do anything, you know. So they asked if he would like a drink of water. And he said, okay. So they took him over, he took a drink, he went to take a drink of water, okay? And he said a bracha, you know, and he said it very soft. So the three of them who were not wearing kippas or anything started yelling at him and saying, can you say it loud? Can you say it loud so we can answer Amen? That's the only place that you would find something like that, you know, like, you know, we can't hear you.
I love it.
Anyway,
Okay.
have a great day.
Have a
It
great day,
wasn't
everyone.
it wasn't my son-in-law, by the way, in the shackles. It just wasn't, you know.
Oh, good. Okay, happy to hear it.
That's how he told me. Okay.
Bye.